Hello, Neopians. Um, Firstly, apologize for all the technical difficulties reconnecting my OBS for my new layout. Has been a head scratcher to say the least. But last week I shared with you my guide for the art gallery on Neopets. And if you haven't had the chance to check it out, you can do so by clicking up here, down here, somewhere. But this week, I'm turning my attention to another one of the creative contests on Neopets, and that is the poetry contest. So, just like the art gallery, the poetry contest. Let me get to the first frame. Sorry. Just like the art gallery, the poetry contest, obviously is another great way that you can earn cool prizes on site and, more importantly, connect with the creative community. I would say that a lot of the tips that I shared in my art gallery guide apply here too. A lot of those tips were focused on yielding long term success with your crafts and kind of like building a habit of creating. Obviously, many different mediums are accepted by the art galleries. So, I wasn't providing advice on painting, for example, given that someone could do pieces with clay. Um, but with the poetry contest, needless to say, everyone's going to be submitting written works. And, as such, I can provide more technical details in this guide. So, the tips from the last video that apply here include, making sure to plan ahead, obviously taking note of the dates of the contest and submitting on time and staying on topic, keeping consistent. Needless to say, the more that you submit to the contest, not only are you going to improve just by writing more and gaining more confidence, but you'll also probably see some more rewards on the way. And standing out and being unique, find your little niche, your voice to make your work shine. And most importantly, enjoy the process. There's no guarantee that your work will be seen by anyone. So, the most that we can ever hope for is that writing our work provides its own, self-sufficient joy. So again, I go into these tips in greater detail in the art gallery guide. So if you're interested, I suggest you check it out. It's posted as a full video, I believe, on Twitch and on YouTube. So, again, check it out. And before I start this guide, I am going to preface this in that there are no hard and fast rules for tackling poetry. Needless to say, there are an endless amount of ways to approach poetry. But if you are maybe a beginner that's struggling to put pen to paper, or even if you're a more experienced writer just looking to level up, this guide can include some, I guess, tactics and exercises that can help you get the words flowing. So, my first tip would be to pick a simple topic. And I stress simple. So, a common issue I run into with beginner poets is that they don't know what to write about. I mean, writing poetry is something that they don't do often, let alone Neopets themed poetry. There's this whole world, there's all this lore. How do you figure out something to write about? And to those people, I say, keep it simple and specificity is your friend. Um, I think that a lot of people, when they're starting out, they'll pick something that's more akin to a theme to write about. So maybe something like friendship or love. And when you pick kind of lofty, metaphysical, vague concepts, it can be really difficult to distill these into specific images, specific words, a specific story. That's why I say that you should pick something that you care about and something hyper specific, like maybe a character, a place, a game, an item, a pet, or a pet, something that you really like and are really passionate about. And you could imagine even talking to someone endlessly about of what you like about it and starting from there. Again, just to kind of reiterate, vague topics and lofty topics can manifest themselves in so many ways. So if I pick something like, again, friendship, there are so many avenues I can go around. It's hard to kind of pick one. So by honing in on something specific, it's ironic because you're sort of limiting yourself. Instead of there being 5 paths to go down in front of you, if we're going to use this type of metaphor, now there's maybe one. But just by having one and having your blinders on, it can make the path to follow, again, more obvious. So, if we're thinking of characters, you can think of things like, Jador and Ilusin are quite popular to write about. And if you want to be more specific, you could write about the relationship between Jador and Ilusin. Then there's, Hannah and Armin or Conric, for example. Pick, maybe there was a plot when you were, younger playing the site that you were really passionate about. Pick something like that if you're thinking of characters. Places, obviously there's worlds like Morocco, the Haunted Woods, Rue Island, but you can even get even more specific. Like you could pick the Kiko Lake carpentry shop, and write a whole piece on that. Games, obviously things like Mirka Chase or Cast Basher, those are pretty self-explanatory. Um, for pets, items or pets, you could write about maybe a grawl is your favorite pet. Or, if you look up grawls, there's this candy in Neopia, the grawl gobstopper. You could write, an ode to the grawl gobstopper. But again, these are just some examples with which you can come up with your own ideas. Now, the next tip I have is to tell a story with your writing. And again, a poem doesn't need to tell a story, but imagining that you are telling a story can help you guide you to the end, right? If you are going to be writing, let's say, a 16 or 20 line poem, I know that might sound short in some ways, but if you don't know what you're going to be writing about, that can feel really long. You might be writing stanzas that just kind of say the same thing over again. And not in a way that makes it enjoyable to the reader. So, imagining telling a story can help give you that kind of structure and inspiration to continue as you're writing your poem. Now, the basic components of a story is a beginning, a middle, and end. The beginning being like the state of, let's say, the world, let's say a character's mind, a state of things, prior to the middle, which is maybe the challenge or the questioning component that manifests some sort of change, which we arrive to at the end. So there are many different types of stories. There are actual literal journeys. Like you could retell a story from Neopian lore, maybe Hannah and Armin traveling to the ice caves, maybe some sort of character arriving on Croc Island or something like that. Those are, there's like a physical distance, a physical change by the end. You're going from one place to another. But those aren't the only types of stories you can tell. There are obviously internal journeys that you can tell. Maybe there is a Neopet that is deciding which color to change to be. And, they're about to do a dip in the rainbow fountain. And this story is about them considering different options and arriving at the final solution. And then, the last type of story that you could do might be like a temporal story. There might not be some sort of internal journey in a specific character, but you could write a poem that's counting down the final days of the advent calendar, and the different types of seasonal joy as they build on each day, right? Until the culmination of the day of giving in Neopia. So, um, I'd say again, telling a story not only helps guide you through the different, as you're writing and finding inspiration as you're writing, but it also helps the reader, keep their interest maintained as they're reading your poem. Now, the next tip, I need to preface it that poems don't need to rhyme. There are many poems in the poetry contest that don't rhyme at all. But if you're having trouble beginning to write, choosing a rhyme scheme can help give you the, I guess, structure with which to compose a poem. And as you're composing more poems, you're going to discover your personal rhythm and your personal style. So, again, it's kind of a tool that can help you kind of manifest your quirks as a writer, if we might say. Now, in terms of rhyme schemes, there are some classics, and maybe at the beginning I suggest you follow them. I mean, in terms of the poetry contest on Neopets, I'd say most of the accepted poems do follow some of the typical rhyme schemes, which might be A A B B, A B A B, or A A A B. And when I use these letters, if we're imagining a 4-line quatrain of a poem, AA means the first 2 lines rhyme, a couplet, and the last 2 lines rhyme. And we repeat that pattern as we go through the poem. If we have a 16-line poem, there will be 4 of these blocks. If we have a 20-line poem, there'll be 5 of these blocks. When I say A, B, A, B, that means lines 1 and 3 rhyme and lines 2 and 4 rhyme, and so on. And I guess another classic one would be A, B, C, B, where lines 2 and 4 rhyme only. But towards the end of this presentation, I'm going to have some examples, and I'm going to note the rhyme scheme and even, give you the opportunity to guess what it is. But now the next tip, this is the penultimate tip, would be to write a strong hook. As they say, first impressions are important, and the first line of your poem as well as the first stanza is your first impression to the reader, the contest judge, as well as yourself. Sometimes I'm writing a poem and maybe at the midpoint I'm kind of struggling to figure out where to go. But if I have a strong hook, I can always kind of think of that in my mind and remember the tone of kind of what to push for as I'm composing it. So don't be afraid to go big. Again, the hook captures attention. So, some ideas you can use when thinking of a hook or thinking of like the first line of this poem would be to maybe ask an intriguing question. Neopia has lots of intriguing questions. I think I wrote a poem a while back, and we might look at this one later. It's like, what is a growl's favorite food? What is the favorite food of a pet that can eat anything, right? They can eat any item, even valuable items in your inventory, and just kind of having maybe in a way a witty sort of philosophical discussion of this type of topic in Neopian lore. Paint a picture. So use some sort of intriguing imagery for the first line of your poem. Could be another excellent way to start your poem. And then lastly, using sound. So, if you were reading a screenplay, I guess some books do this as well, crash, bang, something big. You can even write it in all caps You could surround it and make it really stand out with some asterisks, for example, and that is a good way to kind of really set a scene quite quickly in a poem. And again, we'll have an example of that later. And my last tip, and I'd say as you start writing more, this tip will become certainly useful, which is to explore form. Again, the poetry contest, while it's solely a contest for written poetic works, um, many different forms of poems are accepted. They don't, while the majority of them are, I guess, like standard quatrains, 16 or 20 line poems, there are other forms of poems accepted from time to time. And, maybe you're a more established writer, searching for inspiration. Well, in that case, then I'd especially say, maybe try writing a different type of poem. Um, and, I'd also say when trying something new, don't be afraid to play around. It might not be the best the first time, but you're only going to get better by firstly exploring more and doing more things. So, there are your standard quatrains, which, if you look at the gallery that's active, I'm sure the majority of the poems are going to be like that. But, there are also villanelles or sonnets, which are sort of similar but different. A sonnet has maybe 3 or 4 quatrains followed by a couplet. Um, but there are also more visual poems that make it in from time to time, including acrostics. I think for Gad's Bogan, the Mystery Island Fruit Festival, I wrote an acrostic that spelled out Gad's Bogan. There have been some poems in the past where there is, maybe a haiku embedded in an image that people make through kind of that old, dashes and dots, for example, that you might see on an old computer. I think there was one for Loop Day last year where it was kind of like a ghost loop's tale, and it was a poem about a ghost loop. So there are, other interesting forms that you can engage with. And, over time, I really suggest that you do. So, moving on to examples. So these are examples from some poems that I have submitted. Most of them may have gotten in, maybe not all of them. But let's take a look. And I apologize for the text being so small, but it's hard to fit all this on one slide. But so this was a poem that I wrote about the Alstaff the Pugil, who is the head judge of the poetry contest in the Neopian lore. You might see some, I guess, in the real old pictures of the catacombs, he was kind of regaling a poem. I think there's a Neodeck card around him. And he's got this classic look to him. So, and so let me read it first and then maybe go over something. So, a black beret and a goatee patch. He is Neopia's last true beatnik. You better come to one of his performances. Trust me, they are on occasion quite scenic. This poem's rhyme scheme is A, B, C, B. So the second line, I try and point to it, but I can't. But lines 2 and 4 are the ones that rhyme, of which rhyming beatnik was really difficult. Again, so, this poem's subject is this very specific character from Neopian lore. This poem, I think, in its entirety was a bit like, I think it was kind of regaling him becoming, the judge of the contest. So that was a little bit of the story there. And, again, discussing a character that not many people know about. So, yeah. So this one I kind of spoke about before, and this one has an example of hooking in the reader through a question at first. And I repeat this question as the first line of every stanza throughout the poem. What is a growl's favorite food? Tricky question, depends on my mood. For even though I'll eat anything, I only like what makes my heart sing. So, in terms of rhyming, nothing too challenging here. It's A A, B B. The first two lines match, the second two lines match, and I maintain that throughout the poem. And given that I later on repeat what is a growl's favorite food, I had to come up with a lot of rhymes that rhyme with food, which thankfully wasn't too challenging. But the story for this was kind of going through all the meals in the day. So, what is a growl's favorite food? Tricky question, depends on my mood. And in the next stanza, we kind of go through, I think, breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert. And then I think this was written for Growl Day. So, kind of end it with how you'd celebrate Growl Day, especially with dessert. So, again, in terms of a story, this was kind of a journey through time in a day example of that as well. Okay. So this one inspired, I had my Billie Eilish moment where they say birds of a feather, but oh, not us too. I'm all sparkles and glitter, you're a muted hue. A pink Van de Geyer and a dark Inca cheek. I crave attention, whereas solitude is what you seek. So this is a poem about two characters from the Puzzle Hunters Club, which had this kind of avatar hunt last year. One, they're coworkers and best friends, but they're totally different. One is all pink, glitz, and glam. I guess like super glitz and glam. And then there is this kind of gothy, chic, moody. I mean, they couldn't be any more different. And I kind of wanted to write a poem. It's kind of a friendship dynamic where one person is all happy go lucky and more excited about the friendship than the other, but at the same time, they're inseparable. So I'd say, again, the rhyme scheme in this isn't challenging at all. It's A A B B. But this features a lot of imagery and contrast in the imagery. You kind of get the brightness, the sparkliness, the glitteriness, the pinkness of Birdie, the Van de Geyer, and you have the gothness, the dreariness, the moodiness of the dark and cheek, Maeve Slade. And then this is the last one. So clippity clackety clop. My path to freedom is cell block. The problem is that I cannot win a game against Master Vex. So this is an example of using kind of like sound as the hook. You're hearing the hoof sounds of the main character, which is Clop, the Mohawk, the crazy Mohawk when you play Cell Block, that I think is your first opponent. The rhyme scheme in this one is A, 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 B. So the first three lines rhyme and the final line does not. And as you go through the 5 stanzas in this, all the final lines will rhyme with Vex. So, and I think I repeat clippity clackety clop as well. So I had to find a lot of words that rhymed with clop, of which, words that end in OCK and cannot, for example, they don't have to end in LOP, let's say. In this poem, the story was, so I guess in the lore of the game of Cell Block is that the prisoners in Marydale Castle have to play Cell Block against Master Vex, and if they're able to ultimately win, they can escape. So, they get to play as many times as they want, and in the 5 paragraphs, Klopp is getting closer and closer to winning until he eventually beats Master Vex and wins. So, Um, again, I think that that one is a good example of using sound to hook the reader and then dive into a story. So now that we are at the end, let's recap. Um, again, for all writers, I'd say pick a simple and specific topic. Again, not, let's say, thematic topics like friendship or love, and you can get hyper specific on areas of Neopets where um, there's deep lore, like Elucid and Dora's relationship. Oh, during the fairy festival might be as specific as you can go that specific. I mean, you can even choose there's plenty of poems written about specific shopkeepers, like the breadmaster Kachik or the Neopian collectible card shop Buzz, for example. Um, Calvara, for example. Um, Tell a story, have some sort of change in the poem so that you're, maybe even making a point or having some sort of takeaway. Choosing a rhyme scheme, having some sort of plan as to how this poem will flow as you go through the poem. Oh, got the order wrong with that one. But writing a strong hook, maybe it's a sound, maybe it's an image, maybe it's a question. And lastly, being open to explore form, especially as you are writing more and more. So now that we are done with the tips, I'm going to take a stab at writing a poem live for you all, with you all, to kind of show you my thought process and decisions as I try to find inspiration. And doing this live on camera, I'm not going to lie, is a little scary and daunting. So we will have to actually use all these strategies to get this done. And one topic, let me figure out how I can. Okay. Cool. I wish I could change this text to not be so ugly. Here. So one topic that is coming up is Gray Day. Gray Day. So, that's a pretty difficult topic to write a poem about. I mean, the color gray on Neopets is like the representation of a lot of things, lofty things especially, like depression, sadness, moodiness, etc. And to get started, let me see. I sort of have an idea of how to get started. And I'm going to have some useful websites up while I write this poem. Okay, let me see if I move this over. Okay. So one thing that I usually do when I start writing, if there's a given topic for the contest, is I will search the topic using either the Neopets wiki or I believe that there is a Jelly Neo resource as well. And this will help kind of give me some ideas. Now, if the topic is like techos, it would be great because it'll have a list of like famous techos, and I can choose, something niche to focus on. But this is a color. This theme is truly a theme, and so I kind of have an idea of where I'm going to go, but I just kind of want to walk you through, the steps I think of. So, gray is a depressive color for Neopets and pet pets. Gray pets usually have a depressed expression, even when happy, likely based on the association of the color with sadness, depression, and isolation. Another quirk is the spelling is with the E spelling versus the AY spelling. And for me as a kid, that really messed me up because I genuinely thought it was EY forever. And It's also very popular. I mean, there's the NCUC styles that came back. I guess now it's been a year ago, but and there's kind of the association with the void within plot that's happening, which we still don't fully know about. Um, Jelly Neos. Pedia. There's a Jelly Neo. There's like, oh, Book of Ages. Yeah. Let's see if there's anything here. Okay. So there's obviously Baelia, the Grey Fairy herself, which a lot of people are going to write about. So I'm probably not going to write about her. There's a lot of people that know a lot of details. I mean, there's Tavi in The Void Within who cares for Baelia and rescued her from the cage originally she was captured in. But this is a topic. There is a gray loop in NeoQuest. I don't think that that is a good choice. Gray Fang isn't gray. Gray Mole. Nope. Okay, so hey, it challenging also because there aren't many things to talk about. So I'm going to probably talk about the color, and I've thought of an intriguing question earlier. Let me just remember. Okay, I got it. Let's make the font smaller. And let's left align. Why is everything gray? Oh, because I guess it's gray day. How do you keep the gray away? I hope that this doesn't move up every time I intend. Okay. How do you creep the gray away? So I guess the story that I'm thinking of is the idea. I think a lot of people have the idea that you have to completely keep away negative experiences, but some days are great and some days are gray. You know, we don't get to fully appreciate the great days without having had some gray days in between. The tension between good and bad allows us to enjoy good even more, and having lower days isn't the end of the world, right? If you treat them as such, you may even have more of them, right? Life comes with its patches of positive and negative. And this is an example of a very lofty idea, right? And not being super specific. But the contest theme is this idea of gray, and that is what gray represents. So I'm going to say that there is a character. It's hard to say who they are. They could be any Neopet, I guess, and they could be any Neopian as well. And we're going to get them to the point of maybe saying something like embrace the gray. I'm also thinking that like day is an obvious rhyme. Seize the day might come up at one point. So, oops. Wait. Okay. Okay. How do you keep the gray away? So another tool, which is on the right hand side of your screen that I use all the time, is this thing called Rhyme Zone. And this is like the Bible. You can enter any word in here, even a Neopian fictitious word like tiger squash. Hit search. There are no perfect rhymes, but it'll even generate multi-word rhymes for you. And sometimes you have to play with it, right? Like entire squad isn't a good rhyme. Um, Sometimes I click on the advanced mode and it shows me more, but I can search squash and at least I have the ending of something that I can maybe think of something to combine, right? So we will be using this as we write. So if I type away, that's our first word. These are some words that come up today, okay? My emotions on display. Display comes up. I'm trying to highlight it. Display right here. Play. The gray makes you not want to play, right? This has already helped me begin to decay. Cachet. Okay, no. Dismay. Okay. Bouquet. Bouquet. Bucket. Dexter. There's a cat. Come here. Oh, you want to sleep? Look at this kitty. Look at this kitty. Oh, you can't quite see. Hi. Yes, yes. If you tell. We stopped the kitty in the midst of being bad. How do you keep the gray away? So now I'm going to begin thinking of like a rhyme scheme. And I think the other thing is since we're using away beyond the rhyme scheme of the end of the phrases, there's a lot of opportunity to use internal rhyme, as in rhyming in the middle of phrases, and it's maybe a little bit more of an advanced technique. So let's challenge ourselves to try and incorporate some of that. How do you keep the gray away? Sometimes I lie in my bed and lay, sulking in complete, utter dismay. When you're gray, how do you seize the day? So I guess we just did A. This might be too depressing of a poem for Neopets, but they asked for it. Okay. How do you keep the sometimes I lie in my bed, I lay, sulking complete and utter dismay. When you're gray, how do you seize the day? Maybe we have this character reflecting on the past. I used to be sorry, we have to eat a bagel. We have another cat. I used to be joyful and yellow. Kitty, kitty, kitty. Okay, yep. Come here. Daisy, what's the next line of the poem? She's like, I don't care. Here, you should sleep with your brother. Take a nap. Okay. I used to be joyful and yellow. So what rhymes with yellow? fellow. Othello. Echo. I think I'm going to end this with the word echo. Arrow could work. Okay, I think fellow. I used to be joyful and yellow. Fair weather fellow. Now I am mellow. But now I am mellow. What was the word I said I was going to use? Oh, echo. I don't like that fair weather friend line. I used to be joyful and yellow, a fair weather fellow who would always say hello. But now those joyful days feel like an echo. A somber tune like a slow chord on the cello. Wow. Okay, sometimes you gotta lean. The other thing is this. I think the most important tip is you gotta lean into it being like you can't cringe at your own thing. You're going to cringe. You have to accept that you are going to cringe. There's a degree of cringe. That's just the state of the thing. We're cringing because we're making expression and we're kind of being exposed. Like, don't worry about it. Power through. And, you're going to be feeling these feelings sometimes. But don't let that stop you. And how do we get more space on the screen? I might have to hide the rhyme zone or scoot it over. Let's see what we can do. Yeah, maybe. I guess I only need this rhyme zone. Okay. So now our character has remembered the past. Where's the keynote? Did I just? Is it there? What? Oh, phew, it disappeared from me. Okay, let me make this a little smaller. I used to be joyful and yellow, a fair feathered fellow who would always say hello. So we had a little bit of internal rhyme. I look outside and see the other pets play. Okay, I look outside and see the other pets play. Groan, using some sort of sound there. I slump deeper, deeper into dismay. I look outside and see the other pets play. Groan, I slump sleep deeper, deeper into dismay. When did I? Let's look at what else rhymes with dismay. Yes, you can still see it. Okay, good. When did I become a bouquet decayed? I see the word hooray. I could do something hip hip hooray. Buffet. Cabernet. We can't say that on Neopets. Souffle, croquet, crochet. Blah, blah, blah. When you're jamais, that means never. We could do a line in French. Happiness. How do I? Here, I gotta look this up on my phone, maybe. Happiness, lire. Okay, I guess this is what we're gonna do. Le bonheur, happiness. Est un sentiment is an emotion que je n'ai connu jamais. Happiness is emotion that I've never known. Although, does that kind of contradict the journey we're trying to go on? Perhaps. But maybe in this next stanza, our goal is to have 5 of them. We are going to try to think of, have the character think about. Here, does this size work? 40. Okay. duplicate. Good thing we only need 2 more. So we're running out of space. Okay. How do you keep the gray away? Sometimes I lie in my bed and lay, sulking in complete utter dismay. When you're gray, how do you seize the day? I used to be joyful and yellow, a fair weather fellow who'd always say hello. But now these joyful days feel like an echo, a somber tune like a slow chord on the cello. I look outside and see the other pets play. Grown, I slump deeper, deeper into dismay. When did I become a bouquet decayed? Le bonheur est un sentiment que je n'ai connu jamais. I mean, we could just ask another question to make the kind of turning point right here. Like, is being gray truly bad? It is an experience that that all Neopians have. Whether, okay, let's search rhymes with have. Cav, oh my god, valves. Calves, halved, back, class. Have. Okay, so sometimes when you search the word, it doesn't come up with real good matches. So maybe I'll just search bad and it will give me more. I can think about which ones apply. Sad, glad, plaid. Is plaid a color on Neopets? No. Okay, command, plant. Like, so as the color green changes, you're entering like the the they're just not as exact rhymes, and some of them are good, some of them are not. Lagged. I wonder if there is a Neopets color that could rhyme with bad. Let's see. List of Neopets colors. Because plaid, I don't think is one. Unless you are a chia. Okay, there's 8-bit, Aguina, Alien, Apple. Okay, I won't read all of them. Burlap. Yeah, we could do burlap. I think that works. Is being gray truly bad? It is an experience that all Neopians have. Whether you're gray or burlap, whether your color is gray or burlap, it is a feeling. Okay, now that we're on burlap, we could find burlap rhymes. I'm thinking like overlap, earlap, burlapped. Yeah, overlap didn't even come up. Overlap. Yeah, maybe we'll just say that. Sometimes, if you're struggling on a line, just get through it and then go to the next one. And you will return to it if it needs to change. Oh, look at two cats sleeping. Um, it is a feeling. Whether your color is gray. It is a feeling in which we all overlap. Okay. How do you keep, you got to reread it every single time. How do you keep the gray away? Sometimes I lie in my bed and lay, sulking in complete utter dismay. When you're gray, how do you seize the day? I used to be joyful and yellow, a fair-weathered fellow who would always say hello. But now those joyful days feel like an echo, a somber tune like a slow chord on the cello. I look outside and see the other pets play. Groan, I slump deeper, deeper into dismay. When did I become a bouquet decayed, le bonheur et un sentiment que je n'ai connu jamais? Is being gray truly bad? It is an experience that all Neopians have. Whether your color is gray or burlap, it is a feeling in which we all overlap. While being gray is certainly a struggle, okay, I'm thinking of something. Let's see how it fits in thematically. Rising above it is like figuring out a puzzle. It is certainly tough and takes a muscle. Blah, 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 blah. Double trouble. Ah, okay. How to keep the gray away? Sometimes lie in the bed of light, sulking, complete, and utter dismay. When you're gray, how do you seize the day? I used to be joyful and yellow, fair with a fire, will always say hello. But now those joyful days feel like an echo, a somber tune, like a slow chord on the cello. I look outside and I see the other pets play. Groan, I slump deeper, deeper into dismay. When did I become a bouquet decayed, le bonheur et un sentiment que je n'ai connu jamais? Is being gray truly bad? It's an experience that all Neopians have. Whether your color is gray or burlap, it's a feeling which we all overlap. While being gray is certainly a struggle, rising above it is like figuring out a puzzle. It's certainly tough and it takes a muscle, but nothing. I could say snuggle, but I'm actually not sure if I could say that on Neopets. Whistle, a pistol, muzzle, muzzled, entwistle. Muscle, puzzle, struggle. Let's see, struggle. trouble, null, funnel, fennel, rebuttal, thermocouple, antifungal, snuggled. Wow, the shade of green right here is so light. I was like, am I imagining it? Muggle. Hmm. Okay, let's just search puzzle, see if even more things come up. Hustle, Brussels. Smuggle. I could say like embrace the gray. It's not a feeling to muzzle. Throw it in your duffel. Oh, bundle, couple. Okay, those are some more words. Bundle, trundle, tunnel, muddle, crumble, crumble, subtle, fumble, mumble, grumble, stumble, jumble, jungle. But you'll navigate your way through the gray jungle. Eh. So this kind of changed from what we intended to say at the beginning. But by having an idea of the beginning, middle, and end, it kind of helped us find our way. And we got to the end, right? I mean, we kind of wrote this in maybe 20 minutes or so. Um, and I think I have a week before the contest, so I may even change it. But, my idea at the beginning was uh, someone struggling to maybe push the gray away and my idea was, hey, sometimes we can embrace the gray. We go through these moments. We'll face the gray moments when we do. And it is okay to be having moments where you're maybe chilling by yourself and getting all cozy, right? But I think this kind of changed. So, first, how do you keep the gray away? Sometimes I lie in my bed and lay, sulking in complete utter dismay. When you're gray, how do you seize the day? So, the character starts off sulking in the room. They remember in the next stanza, I used to be joyful and yellow, a fair weather fellow who would always say hello. But now these joyful days feel like an echo, a somber tune, like a slow chord on the cello. Now they are looking and longing for something further. I look outside and see other pets play, groan. I slump deeper, deeper into dismay. When did I become a bouquet? Decayed, le bonheur et un sentiment que je n'ai connu jamais. Is being gray truly bad? It is an experience that all Neopians have. Whether your color is gray or burlap, it's a feeling in which we all overlap. Okay. While being gray is certainly a struggle, rising above it is like figuring out a puzzle. It is certainly tough and it takes a muscle, but you'll navigate your way through the gray jungle. And should navigate your way through the gray jungle. Okay, maybe I add a sixth stanza. The next time, with time, okay, maybe I'll say this. You'll eventually find your way through the gray jungle. The next time you're having a bad day, the next time you fall under the curse of gray, don't fret. Okay, curse of gray. I kind of want to say way, but I just did that. Don't fret. Okay. And then maybe cozy up, embrace the gray, and embrace the gray to seize the day. So you kind of have that circular theme from the first stanza. So that final one is nowhere near done yet. Okay, so the next time. Bagel. Okay, let's find some more words. We could use the word cliche. Don't fret. Pardon the cliche. The next time joy is being kept at bay, the next time you fall under the curse of gray, don't fret, pardon the cliche, cozy up and embrace the gray to seize the day. So there we go. Wow, gray day. Very difficult topic to write about, but we did it. Okay. And what helped us get past all of the uncertainty in writing a poem about something, pretty serious was the techniques that we had to kind of fall back on. Like just the act of trying to keep up with the rhyme scheme helped us come up with words that can kind of get us through the tougher sections of this piece. And in the end, we have something, right? Like, I think, is any poem going to be perfect? I mean, this is Neopets poetry, right? Like, there are amazing poets out there, and the standard is high, but the standard is also not high. Like, many different levels are accepted into the contest, and you're only going to improve if you keep writing, right? So I think this brings us to the end of this guide. We have not only reviewed the tips for the poetry contest, but we also, wrote a poem live, which for me was just a nuts experience. I, had a bit of a stage fright, leading into it. But again, if you look at the art gallery video, which I posted last week on both YouTube and Twitch, you will find even more tips about how to keep up with the contests and how to build kind of like a healthy relationship with the contests, how to build a habit of, regularly writing and creating content for the contest. So I highly suggest that you check that out, especially if you've watched this video. And, if you enjoyed either video, I would really appreciate it if you drop a like and subscribe. I am trying to get to 50 subscribers on Twitch, especially, so that I can reach affiliate status. So, your like will go a long way. Now, in terms of, now that we've done an art gallery guide and we've done a poetry contest guide, I think that I am going to, I put it on the schedule, do a regular, I think, Sunday live, some sort of creating kind of stream. Probably, given that it's Sunday and I have more time to devote, I'll probably do more arts and crafts then. Since poetry can be done in a shorter amount of time, I might, figure out another day in the week for that. But, if you want to join me, maybe you're working on projects, we can work on them together, and it will be a blast. So until next time, peace.